The so-called war on terror is no longer a conflict fought solely on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan. There's a second front, an underground offensive aimed at winning the hearts and minds of young Muslims worldwide.
I think the media war for Al-Qaeda has become just as important, if not more important, than the actual military campaign that they're waging.
In this virtual war, radical Muslims are using the internet to wage a propaganda campaign with videos rarely seen on traditional media.
When I saw these kind of videos and these websites that I would visit, they would just tell you that this is what you do, pick up a gun, join a terrorist group.
This enemy, he could be some 19-year-old logging on from his computer in Toronto.
June 2006. Canadians are shocked to discover that a group of alleged terrorists have been plotting to bomb the Parliament buildings and behead the Prime Minister in a series of Al-Qaeda-inspired attacks. None of the 17 arrested had ever been to training camps in Pakistan or Afghanistan. They'd been recruited and trained right in their own homes through the internet. Charges against one of the group have been stayed, and he reveals for the first time the seductive appeal of the videos. Under Canadian law, his identity must be kept secret.
After a lot of Muslim parents, they tried their best to keep their kids away from certain mosques that had extremist Muslims and things like that. But one thing, that kids will actually go up to is the internet, and you can basically watch anything you want. For example, if you go on an extremist website, they would use all those people getting tortured in Palestine and getting killed and in different Muslim countries, and they would just tell you that this is what you do to get them back. This is how you can stop this. This is how you can put an end to it. And the way to do that will be, pick up a gun and do something about it. Join a terrorist group or something. And they justify by saying that this is what Islam tells you.
One man not surprised by the arrests in Toronto is Tom Quiggin, a former intelligence officer and Canada's leading expert on the radicalization of Muslim youth.
Why don't we have a broader national strategy on how to deal with the issues of political extremism and terrorism? Despite the arrests and despite all the faint signals and the early warning signs, we tend to ignore those until there's going to be a major catastrophe. Part of the problem is that governments typically don't want to deal with an issue until it literally blows up in front of them.
Having a gun in your hand, every kid wants that. It's just like something cool. You see it in action movies and whatnot. And basically, this is putting action with religion. And then you don't see the other side that what you're going to end up doing. You're going to end up killing innocent people. They don't show anything about that.
At West Point Military Academy, where the future leaders of the U.S. Army are groomed, there are courses in online threats. And in Lieutenant Colonel Joe Felter's class, the Canadian example is on the curriculum.
Get some questions on the case. Toronto case. What is the most interesting thing about the Toronto case? What made it distinct from the other cases we've studied, the other individuals we've studied, and why should it concern us?
I think 2 points. The first is they didn't travel. They didn't go overseas like all the other groups did. And the second point is the recruiting in schools was a pretty disturbing aspect.
Hatching plots, training, getting information, all in the comfort of their suburban community.
I think they wanted to do it, so they had the intent of doing it, but they just didn't have the experience to know how to go about doing it.
When I was commissioned, you knew where your enemy was. They had a return address. If we're fighting the Soviet Union, it had a capital city, it had industry. This enemy is an ideology, a hostile ideology, if you will. And it's understanding what this ideology is. And they're slick. They're putting together propaganda that is very appealing. It's very effective.
At first blush, the thousands of hours of jihadi videos seem unconnected. But West Point's media warfare team sees a carefully constructed strategy.
Joe, what were your thoughts for this?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole point of the lecture was to show the cadets how the terrorists were trying to use our own words against us. And so what we did was go through a lot of There are three pillars to Al-Qaeda's media strategy. The first is that they've got to show there's a global conspiracy against Islam. The way this is done is they will show images of President Bush holding hands with members of the Saudi royal family. They'll do anything that they can to establish this Zionist, Crusader, Shia, and apostate Sunni conspiracy that's trying to destroy Islam and wipe it off the face of the planet, they say. The second part of this global media strategy is to demonstrate that Al-Qaeda is the only one in the Islamic world willing to stand up and fight against this, to defend Islam. And jihad today means you have to pick up a sword or a gun or a bomb, whatever it is, you have to do something. You can't just sit and read about it or watch it on TV. And third, they have to show that everyone else besides Al-Qaeda, the jihadist movement, are morally bankrupt and corrupt. It goes back to fitting really within Al-Qaeda's core media strategy, which is how do you get Muslims to feel like we're all in this together, and then how do you mobilize them around this goal? Wherever you are, if you're in Chechnya, if you're in Canada, if you're in the UK, wherever it is, we're all in this together. You need to think globally and act locally.
In fact, one that got a lot of play on the online forums was the story of the rape of an Iraqi girl in Haditha, that I think was actually maybe in some ways as influential as Abu Ghraib and didn't get nearly as much play in the West, but it fed into a story. Part of the battle in Iraq is the battle for telling the story of Iraq. And in order to build credibility, you use the videos to demonstrate that you actually are a functioning insurgent group, that you actually are doing damage to the Crusaders.
The front lines, there's no more international threats, domestic threats as we know. The front lines are, Lower Manhattan. It's Toronto. It's here in the home front, and I think our cadets appreciate that.
For me, the creation and the commanding. How can you acknowledge that God created you, yet you do not acknowledge that He is the legislator? And Islam, He gives us the divine solution.
But what we want is to see Islam dominate the whole world, in Canada, in Britain, all around the world, to make sure that the Sharia is dominant everywhere.
Nobody is worthy to be obeyed except Almighty God.
These are the energetic recruits on the opposite side of the struggle.
How do we know your view is right and that person's view is right? We need a criteria.
Living proof of how effective jihadi propaganda can be.
Engage with the public, tell them about Islam, and dissolve all of these fallacies created by the media, like the BBC and the CNN, and tell the Muslims and the non-Muslims what really is happening. Because we've got this medium called, as I'm sure you're aware, the internet. And the internet is full of information about what's really happening.
These technologically savvy young people get their own version of the news from online jihadi films that tap into the spirit of youth culture and its music. The videos aim to make these young people susceptible to rhetoric about how jihad can address their grievances.
For some people, Sunnah means Medina Munawwara, the city. For others still, the word Sunnah...
Under a train station in East London, Asiem Chowdhury, a British-born lawyer and radical organizer, fans the flames of jihad amongst his followers, having in the past called for the Pope's death and anticipated civil war between Muslims and non-Muslims.
Nowadays, they demonize the Muslims. They talk about this evil ideology. These people, it doesn't matter how many die, because really, we don't look at them as human beings. So when the Muslims are slaughtered, for example, in Afghanistan, by B-52 bombers, Tommy Franks would say, we don't do body counts. But when it comes to a couple of people in the Twin Towers, or a few people on the London Underground, they want a minute silence for every single person who died. Nowadays, the Muslims need to prepare. They'll prepare nuclear weapons in order to engage in jihad.
Obviously, we have many stories in the news that come out. Usually you see a story in Sky News that a helicopter has gone down, and they'll say it's a mechanical hitch and so on. So when you get the truth from the Mujahideen and they show you, you know, obviously shooting the actual copter down, obviously as a Muslim, you know what's going on in the Muslim lands.
One of the ways in which the Muslims are finding the truth is via the internet. There's no doubt about that. This is
Zach and Zain are two of Anjem Chowdhury's followers who live a simple life in East London. They've divested themselves of much of their jihadi literature because of British anti-terrorism laws. Instead, they get informed by seeing online jihadi videos.
These videos are nothing. These videos are just people watching what's actually going on in a place, instead of the candy floss news that you watch here. You don't know. You watch this news and you don't know people that they've got women and men and they're them with dogs, and they're just going into people's houses and shooting them, and you don't know these things.
These videos are literally just factual videos. Here's a man, here's the gun, here's the army, look, we're shooting these American soldiers, or look, we're putting roadside bombs against American soldiers, or we're trying to free these Muslim captives in this prison, or, you know, I'm a Muslim sister in Abu Ghraib and my 13-year-old daughter killed herself by banging her head against the wall. You can say it's propaganda, but what you see mostly on these videos is just actual events that are happening.
For many young men brimming with jihadi ideology, it's a small step from thought to action. Mohammed Siddiq took that fateful decision in July 2005 when he became one of the bombers on the London Underground.
Your democratically elected governments continuously perpetuate atrocities against my people all over the world, and your support of them makes you directly responsible, just as I am directly responsible for protecting and avenging my Muslim brothers and sisters.
The jihadis commemorated his death with a slick video produced on the first anniversary of the attack. It's intended to inspire others looking to take action. London's huge Muslim population has long been a target of the jihadi propaganda war. Renowned reporter Yosri Fouda works for Al Jazeera, the Arab world's CNN, which operates a major production center in the city. Less than a year after Fouda got the call of his career, a relayed message from the senior leadership of Al-Qaeda. Although crippled by the American invasion of Afghanistan, they invited him to make a documentary in which they would tell all about the attacks they claimed to have orchestrated.
They sent me what looked like an outline, a suggestion for a two-part documentary, which included places to film, people to interview, some archive shots, and even how they would like the documentary to start, with a line of poetry by Sheikh Osama bin Laden. They disoriented me. They took me to what I discovered later to be a safe house in Karachi.
Inside were two organizers of both these men are now in American custody and will be tried for the mass murders.
And you see Ramza bin al-Shiba with about 3 laptops around him, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed with about 5 different mobile phones on him, and I don't know, God knows how many SIM cards he had on him. He was constantly switching between SIM cards and constantly text messaging and receiving text messages from people. He was never off work. You can't compare it to our way of being professional, for instance. They don't have an office and a secretary and things like this. They are on their own.
Fouda didn't listen to Al-Qaeda's suggestions. His independently edited program was broadcast on Al Jazeera across the Arabic-speaking world, but Al-Qaeda felt it could be improved upon. It eventually turned to its video production company, As-Sahab, or Cloud Productions, to produce its own account of 9/11. As-Sahab is no fugitive organization hiding in caves. It's a sprawling global network of technicians manufacturing films for a specific Muslim audience. In the world of underground videos, distribution takes nothing more than an internet connection. And Dr. Mohammed Al-Masari, a Saudi Arabian dissident based in London, has no trouble moving jihadi propaganda videos around the globe.
It's the easiest thing in the world to post and upload videos. The one who shoots the videos, go to an internet cafe in Baghdad, USB, load it up to a secret site somewhere in the world. It doesn't matter where is the site located. Gives a call to a friend, let us say in Hong Kong. They just take an example, just arbitrary. Tell him your auntie is coming tomorrow in the airplane. This means there's a video. Download it. So you download it, and we have tens of thousands of members all over the world.
Media distributors like Dr. Al-Masari have provided access to a wide range of jihadi videos that reinforce their propaganda strategy. One type portrays the oppression of Muslims at the hands of non-Muslims. From the inmates of Guantanamo Bay, to Israel's conflict with Palestine, to the Russian invasion of Chechnya, the collective community of Muslims, or Ummah, is portrayed as being under siege. Then there are the training videos designed to inspire potential jihadists. They outline the planning of missions like this supposed rehearsal for the We see the hijackers working together, sharing meals and building camaraderie. Other videos detail the outcome of the missions themselves, images never seen in traditional media. Sometimes the attacks even seem planned with the best camera angles in mind.
Pour the ball bearings down evenly into the frame. Pour the adhesive over the balls in a uniform manner.
There are the how-to videos showing the best way to make bombs. They even illustrate how devastating the explosion will be in a crowd. Many of these operations will be missions, and the death of the attacker will then be celebrated in martyrdom videos distributed through the internet. They often include messages from the bombers about their motives and grievances. An alleged associate of several al-Qaeda figures, Sheikh Omar Bakri is one of the few radical video producers willing to appear on camera. He spent 2 decades building a following in Britain before being forced to flee to Lebanon.
When I speak about I said Magnificent 19. Indeed, they are terrorists. I have no doubt it's an act of terrorism, and they are really 5-star terrorists.
Bakri is proud of the network he left behind and his followers who continue to antagonize British authorities.
Sharia, and something we call for and even are willing to die for. Dawah and jihad, fi sabilillah.
Of course I'm happy. I'm so proud of them. At least they are coming out proudly, loudly, practicing their own religion. They don't fear anybody, they don't integrate. I'm so happy to see them. Those who used to be young, they grown and they are become more advanced. And you can see that myself.
Fearing Bakri will build a radical following here, Lebanese authorities keep a close eye on him. Still, he's greeted like a celebrity everywhere he goes.
السلام عليكم كيف حالكم؟ خلي شو صابون عملوا لنا هون الناس بيرحبوا فيكم ولا لا؟ السلام عليكم كيف حالكم؟ See, Britain is different. Here it's they are Muslims. They are welcome everybody. So you can hear it. There's no problem. كيف حالكم؟ كيف صحتكم؟ حياكم الله.
Bakri owns a number of horses because he believes they are a potent symbol of the jihadist preparing himself for war.
Horse in Islam very important. In fact, there's no preparation for jihad without horse. The Prophet said horse is always attached to the goodness on the day of judgment. And he asked us to prepare horse, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even in the Quran mentioned the horses many times, and therefore the Muslims care about the horse. That's why really the great lions of Islam nowadays, Sheikh Osama, he always come in horse.
Bakri knows that exploiting the imagery within the Quran, or Islamic holy book, is a sure way to win over unknowing Muslims. In the Quran, paradise is blessed with an abundance of water. So when a suicide bomber is shown next to water, they are considered to have ascended to heaven. Storms, understood as an act of Allah, associate jihadists with divine power. The black flag was the battle standard of the Prophet Muhammad. Jihadists also read meaning into images such as a newly black beard on Osama bin Laden.
If you are in the battlefield, Islam permits you to dye your beard black, and that is to look younger, to send message to the Muslims around the world. I have a new round coming, so we are not yet really, as people think, we dropped the weapon. I think there's a new wave of attack by Sheikh Osama bin Laden. And that's why I read the last tape he sent it. I read from it threatening and warning and giving signal to his brothers in America.
At West Point Military Academy, studying those online videos is now as important as learning infantry tactics or tank maneuvers. For cadets in the media warfare class, one of the assignments is to invent an Iraqi terrorist group and produce a propaganda video, all to get under the skin of the enemy.
Cadets are going to have to think strategically. They're going to have to understand their enemy at a strategic level. They're literally going to be the mayors of towns out in western Iraq, southern Afghanistan. And they're going to need to understand who they're fighting at a strategic level and in ways that normally was safe for colonels and generals in previous conflicts.
Here's our agenda. We will be briefing you on the backgrounds of the group, their key leaders, and why they were established, and then we'll present to you our website and our videos.
In the background is a map of Iraq with the Quran on top. The Arabic script on top reads, "Fight them, Allah shall torture them by your hands." And then in the middle you can see
They're the same demographic as the terrorists. They're 18 to 25. They've grown up with the internet. They're very media savvy. So I guess what we teach them is this war can be fought, anywhere from just by logging on.
You can definitely start to see how they feel about what's happening in their country right now. You can put yourself in their shoes, something that people here normally don't get to do.
But I think you understand your enemy better in the kind of fight that we're fighting. It's no longer lines and trenches. I think it gives you a solid understanding of what we're facing with this type of warfare.
These days, the videos are digital and the medium is the internet. But it's the same message that was carried on the low-tech VHS tapes made by the Mujahideen resistance in the 1980s when it was fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. Those VHS tapes, produced by the thousands, urged Muslims around the world to help liberate Afghanistan. Abdullah Anas was son-in-law to Abdullah Azam, a father of modern jihad and mentor to Osama bin Laden.
I remember filming Mujahideen eating, Mujahideen climbing the mountains, Mujahideen getting trained, Mujahideen fighting. Sort of news, direct, from the field, direct. It's not professional like documentary.
One man who heeded the call was a rich young Saudi. Osama bin Laden was quick to realize how the camera could further the cause and his own ambitions.
We had some fighters, some Mujahideen, refusing to take pictures, refusing to be filmed. But Osama was opposite of that. He was involved, even if somebody, sometime asking some journalists to film him. He wasn't a man behind the camera, he was a man of the camera.
Praise be to Allah, because He gave us this great gift of jihad in the name of God. So the highest point on the camel's hump of Islam is jihad, which people these days have forgotten. This neglected obligation has been granted to us by God after a long time without it.
Anas is outraged by how the jihadi ideology of the early 1980s has been distorted by leaders like Osama bin Laden.
Everyone's trying to talk about jihad, but what kind of jihad? Killing of civilians, kidnapping, hijacking aeroplanes, kidnapping tourists. So what kind of jihad? No one can be safe at all. No children, women, Western, non-Western, Muslim, non-Muslim. The culture of jihad, if not under control, will be completely negative.
The Afghan recruitment videos paved the way for jihadi filmmakers who documented the Bosnian War in the 1990s. Egyptian director Asiem filmed the exploits of mujahideen who defended Bosnian Muslims from Serbian and Croatian attackers. Now living in Germany, he continues to make jihadi propaganda while being closely monitored by German state security.
In Bosnia, I made reports about the situation there. As I said, I am Muslim, so I stand on the Muslim side. I cannot say that I am neutral. I am a Muslim. I try to show images from the Muslim perspective. The point of view and what the enemy has done to Muslims, whether they're civilians or not, it's my right to show these pictures.
Bosnian propaganda films were more sophisticated than those in Afghanistan. They had flashy graphics and complex storytelling that honored European Muslims who died for the cause.
I tell my brothers in Germany, the German Muslims, that they need to come clear in front of God on the day of judgment. Join our jihad. I said, for example, when a mujahideen dies, you see the difference on his face when he's dead as compared with a non-Muslim killed in war. Both have been killed, maybe even with the same weapons. But the Muslim martyr sees, if he is pure, what God has promised him: paradise. That's why he feels pain, but he is still smiling. Maybe the non-Muslims cannot understand this, but he has seen his place in paradise as the Prophet told us.
Today's European terrorist networks have been influenced by the veterans of the Bosnian War. Most outside observers missed this radicalizing of European Muslims. The jihadi media strategy has evolved tremendously since Bosnia. Guido Steinberg, former terrorism advisor to the German Chancellor, worries about how to cope with the Bosnian legacy.
There is a very efficient propaganda machine at work here. We simply need to look at the development of the jihadi internet throughout the last decade. In 2001, everything was in Arabic. Now, we have a growing number of Turkish websites. There is a very clear trend that Turks increasingly radicalize themselves through these networks and increasingly absorb the ideology of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda in Iraq and other groups. The Turks have in Germany over 2 million people. It's the biggest immigrant population and it's the biggest Muslim group. And if this trend towards radicalization continues among those young Turks in Germany, the social base of jihadism will be expanded. This means that the security problems we've had so far, which has been mostly limited to young Arabs, will grow significantly.
For German state security, the media war is a top priority, and they carefully examine jihadi videos.
This is a kind of martyr's last will and testament in the video form. Here you can see him saying goodbye to his commander.
For people who are in search for their identity, the probability is extremely high that this person will first stumble on radical Islamists because they are so disproportionately present on the internet.
And there's written material too, so it is very important that these moderate Muslims who respect our laws be more prevalent and not leave the field to these radicals, yeah?
This is exactly our problem. They are not even present on the internet.
The analysis shows more and more material distributed widely in specific languages, and this indicates a danger to our country.
George Malbruno, a journalist for the Paris daily Le Figaro, starred in a jihadi video. For 3 terrifying months in 2004, he was held hostage in Iraq. The hostage and execution videos have been a powerful weapon in the jihadists' media arsenal.
Very close to the end of my life.
Votre président est entêté.
They told us 2 days before, your president is very stubborn. He does not want to understand anything. Call for help in front of the camera. Call your president for help. Tell him the situation is serious. You can be killed at any moment. At the time we recorded the videos, we were actually fine. But when my wife saw this or my mother saw that, they fell off their chairs. They were dispirited because they didn't know how I was doing or what state I was in.
The jihadists show no mercy to their victims. Japanese backpacker Shosei Koda paid the ultimate price in 2004 when he was kidnapped while on a day trip from Jordan into northern Iraq.
The infidel will pay for the crimes against Islam committed by his leaders. Allahu Akbar! May Allah glorify Islam!
Beheading looks, for the onlooker, extremely terrifying because you have an intact human being in front of you and suddenly he's in pieces. Sometimes, obviously, blood flowing, which is very shocking. All of that is sufficient to terrify the onlooker. That's one of the purposes of that public assault. It's a minimal gain. We don't know. Nobody came back to tell us.
In Iraq, the favorite targets of kidnappers are Iraqi and foreign contractors.
The purpose is obviously to undermine the confidence of the enemy, because everyone is terrified, and we know how much contractors are terrified by that, and how much they put strain on the resources of the American army to give them protection, which is obviously putting the enemy resources in the wrong place. We're able to get this man, show him, put him in orange clothes, to throw and avenge Guantanamo, and execute him in front of everyone. And we are able to do it, and we don't care.
Moi, j'essayais toujours d'en garder sous la chaussure.
I always tried to look beyond the situation. As long as we weren't dressed in orange, I thought, there is hope, so I didn't crumble. We would say, we must protect ourselves, that we need to hold on. So if they had put me in orange clothing, I would have had to face the fact that the situation is not wonderful. It's bad, it's terrible. But you have to keep a bit of hope, and if not, we would not have been able to cope with the terrible moments which happily didn't happen to us.
The jihadists may not have got full propaganda value out of Mel Bruneau, but the French press speculated that his freedom cost the French government more than $15 million. The jihadi threat is felt everywhere. Norway has troops in Afghanistan, and they've been directly threatened by Al-Qaeda. In response, the Norwegian government has invested significantly in monitoring and cataloging jihadi internet activity to find out who's behind the media strategy. What they found is a shadowy figure named Abu Masab al-Suri.
There has to be discipline. If there's a unit that's going to disintegrate, follow regular prayers and disciplines. That will be your survival kit, here and in the afterlife. Respect for God is the best survival kit. Do you understand? A unit commander should follow the rules of jihad and know what God forbids and what God allows in terms of bloodletting.
Only Osama bin Laden is more influential than al-Suri. His 2,500-page textbook on jihad and his filmed lectures became the blueprint for a decentralized al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attacks.
What he suggests is that the message should be directed towards broader segments, the masses, not only an elite. And it should be tailored to the different groups that you would like to influence.
Many believe that al-Suri was captured in Pakistan in 2005 and is being held in a secret American prison. But his taped lectures are still the cornerstone of the jihadi global media war. By the end of term, Jared Brackman's Army cadets will have learned just how difficult it's going to be to fight that war. They've studied the battlefield, and they know that by the time they deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan, there will be jihadi cameras waiting to exploit every misstep.
Cadet Basher is going to explain to you what the assignment was for him in terms of creation of a jihadi-style propaganda video.
This assignment was part of the SS-491 class, Advanced Terrorism Studies.
I guess the question for you guys is this representative? What does this tell you then in your jobs as platoon leaders that you're going to have in a year or so? If, Cadet Basher can put this together in an hour, are you guys going to be seeing this out there, and how do you deal with that?
You make a mistake and you let your platoon by actually kill some civilians that gets caught on tape, it will have negative impacts that will literally reach all the way back to the President of the United States and his foreign policy.
So part of a job as a platoon leader is to educate your soldiers to make sure that they know, don't be taking pictures of things that are necessarily harmful. Something that looks innocent can be misconstrued by a propaganda video very easily. And I think that we need to make individual soldiers more aware of the possible power they could have in that vein.
If I was going to counter this propaganda, I would counter it with the message of, besides violence, what are these groups actually offering? They give you guns, but we give you hospitals. They give you bombs, and we give you food. In the long run, I think the trick will be convincing the Muslim world that they love their kids more than they like Al-Qaeda or more than they hate us.
I think that ultimately they're going to lose because their message just doesn't sell. I don't think it really resonates as broadly as they hope it will. In many ways, they're competing for hearts and minds in the same way that the West is.
These scholars who are providing the intellectual coherence are very, very powerful. They're talked about on a daily basis in the jihadist chat rooms. Those guys need to be shut down. The strategists who are coming up and reading Sun Tzu and Clausewitz and the great military historians, and then reading our own military strategy and using it against us, need to be silenced. The webmasters who are making all of this information and propaganda accessible need to be, these sites need to be captured, these guys need to be imprisoned. It will take every tool at our disposal to fight back.
The Americans' counter strategy is clear. Crash as many websites as possible, try to undermine as many posting places as possible, prevent the posting as possible. You may have noticed, you may have tried to download some of these movies, these videos, and after maybe 8 hours, 12 hours, the Americans have recognized it and crashed the site or eliminated the link. But already, hopefully, few hundreds and thousands have downloaded, and they will upload to their friends and the friends to their friends, and sooner or later it will be spreading all over the globe.
Jihadi counter-propaganda is potent, and sometimes it speaks with an American accent.
I will now proceed to destroy my American passport.
The first American charged with treason since 1952, Adam Gadan, born Adam Perlman in California, has become a senior spokesperson for Al-Qaeda while hiding in Pakistan.
The first question Americans might ask is, has America really been defeated? The answer is yes, and on all fronts. American and coalition officials have stated repeatedly that they are unable and unwilling to face the Mujahideen in Iraq and Afghanistan militarily, but are still trying to win the battle for hearts and minds, which they have also lost in spectacular...
There is a $1 million reward offered for his capture, a sign of his value in the propaganda war. Perhaps the greatest impact of the jihadi media war is felt in the Muslim world, where clerics fear the video's seductive power. Imam Gamal al-Din Khattab worries that the jihadi propaganda machine is causing young Muslims to abandon the faith, since the online media depicts him and other moderates as being untrustworthy government stooges.
It's because the governments of the Islamic world try to control the religious establishments and limit their ability to act and function properly that we get less funds than cinema and theater in the Islamic world. No wonder that some people perceive the traditional religious scholars as controlled and used by the government, whereas bin Laden and the likes of him are in the perception of young people free.
It's young people in the Muslim world that are torn between the two sides in the media war. Here in Cairo, students Muhammad, Ahmed, and Sharif debate the merits of Osama bin Laden's message.
If you have to ask, then ask God. If you have to request help, then request it from God.
These are God's words, and we can't dispute that. But how is this jihad applicable? When is it time? Is this jihad?
Is he saying this, and he's convinced that what he's doing is fine? These are God's words, and he's convinced that God ordered him to do this. But is he being logical? He's not using common sense here. The idea of killing civilians. Where is his sensibility?
It's provocation. It's revenge for the attacks on civilians and the occupation of their land. It's inevitable that it leads to terrorism. And I'm sorry to call him a terrorist, but I don't know if he is a terrorist or mujahideen or a warrior. Honestly, it's provocation. These countries have made him what he is. Yes, but to commit terrorist or missions against civilians? You can be convinced when you watch the video of the towers falling. As much as you feel a sense of remorse for it, there is a duality of sensations that you feel. There is also a sense of justice. In the case of the Americans, when you hear that the Americans are doing things in Iraq, in Palestine, and even more in Afghanistan.
The quiet Toronto suburb that saw some of its youth recruited into a terrorist plot through the internet is still reeling. Community leaders are struggling to respond.
When these kids watch this, and he's been told it's okay to resort, because he's frustrated and he's feel helpless, and he's told by a half-baked scholar with a literal interpretation of Quran, it's okay to do this if you want to avenge what's happening in the other part of the world. That's very dangerous.
I would always take these questions towards a priest or something, to a priest, and most of the times I would get the answer, just stay away from these websites. That's all they would tell me. And they would tell me not to bring these things up in a mosque, because most of them have this fear that if they end up talking about it, they might be under surveillance by the Secret Services or something like that, and they think that they might get in trouble.
How do we respond to this, and who has to respond to this kind of radicalization? Certainly a part of it has to come from the Muslim community itself. But to be fair, most Muslims don't understand this problem any more than most Christians or Jews understand it, because they're not radicals, because they haven't been exposed to the extremist literature.
There's a lot of Muslim parents now, especially for the last 3 years, are very vigilant about what their kids are watching, where they're in contact, and what they've been downloading in terms of internet.
Parents, if you ask me, parents, the main thing they should do is, if they find out that their son or daughter is all of a sudden they're becoming religious, and they're not just becoming religious, but they're going to the extreme level, they should try their best right at that moment to educate them properly. Send them to a proper Islamic school, give them some proper Islamic courses or something like that, so they can find out the truth. Their teacher is the internet, and that's the website, and they don't know who's behind the screen, who's posting these things on the website, whether it's a priest or is it just some young guy.
Certainly for the younger man, and by younger I mean 25 and under or something like that, it is possible, and it's been done in other countries, to expose them to classic Islamic themes, to expose them to the study of the Quran, and show them how they've been taken down a false path by radicalizers who fed them false or cherry-picked information which is irrelevant and out of context.
Allah prophesies that one day the Muslims will conquer the world. When I say that, I don't just mean in Saudi Arabia. When I say that, I don't just mean in France. I mean all over the world. I mean in Britain. I mean in Canada, in Ontario, in Ottawa. Everywhere in the world that you see today will one day rule by Islam. If in the eventuality they do not want to be ruled by Islam, by the word, then eventually an army of Islam will come and conquer.
I don't believe you can actually stop them. As soon as a website goes down, they can literally almost set their watches and know when it's going to come back up again.
I did say it many times, the way you negotiate with Sinn Féin, the way you negotiate with PLO, the way you negotiate with Mandela, and all of them used to be called terrorists, yet why not negotiate with Al-Qaeda and with Bin Laden? I think if you negotiate with them, you could really save a lot of life.
I think that this movement, this ideology has been entrenched in at least the next 2 generations. So I believe this will be decades long.
if you're in a country like this, I mean, you can't go around killing people and just go outside the house, start killing people and expect things to get better. And that's not right. I mean, you can't do anything like that. So best thing to do is just pray for them. Pray for their lives to get better and pray for things to get better.